Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream. Have you ever dreamt of hiking the AT? Bruce Matson did, so we're going to follow him every step of the way. Hi, and thanks for coming back to episode number 2 of Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream, sponsored by Trailtopia. Yep, we're back. We had no idea what the response would be to this podcast, but the first show has been downloaded well over 300 times in the first week. When I tell you that my show, Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, took over a month and a half to get to 300 downloads in a single week, then you can see why I am so chuffed. For a point of reference, my show only got 27 downloads in its very first week. Today, Bruce and I will be discussing 2 important questions. Which way you're heading and when are you going? Or, as I prefer, why NOBO, why February? Every hiker spends a lot of time thinking about this stuff, and Bruce, with his attention to detail, has some really thoughtful answers to those questions. But first, how about those days when you've struggled through the morning, probably got 10 miles under your belt, and breakfast is a distant memory? It's lunchtime, and yep, you could always have your 4th Snickers of the day for yet another sugar rush. But sitting there in an empty shelter protected from the bitter wind, I'm sure you'd really rather have Trailtopia's beef-flavoured ramen noodles with green beans, corn and mushrooms. Tea-flippin'-licious. And if you need to go without the gluten, all of Trailtopia's ramen noodle lunches and light dinners are available gluten-free. Try Trailtopia Adventure Food, the best of home cooking away from home. Oh, while I remember, don't forget to send me questions for Bruce, whether or not you're preparing to go on the Appalachian Trail. Funny questions are the best, by the way. Trailtopia will be giving away 2 of their meals to the person who comes up with the best question every week, and will be giving away the first prizes with next week's show. To our absolute surprise and delight, we've even got a couple of 5-star reviews to tell you about. Actually, it says that we have 5 reviews when you look in iTunes, but 2 of them were obviously so good that Apple counted them twice. Friend of the podcast, Daryl Fleischer, says the first episode was great and I'm really looking forward to this deep dive look at Bruce's story. Becky DB5 calls it another great podcast. I really can't say fairer than that, Becky DB5. So, let's bring in Bruce and his reasons for heading north in flipping February. Oh my gosh. Okay, back on with Bruce. Hi, Bruce. How are you?
I'm great, Steve. Thanks.
Good. We're doing this early morning thing again. I'm not entirely sure how good this is because I'm about 3 cups of coffee into the morning already, so I'm a little bit charged right now. Now, this week, we're going to talk about the route that you're taking and when you're going to be taking it. And I know you're going NOBO, and there seems to be a move at the moment, probably from the ATC, to persuade more people to flip-flop, I suppose to reduce the pressure in the early months in the southern section. Is going NOBO important to you, or did you ever consider hiking an alternative route?
Yes, I gave consideration to, both the southbound and a flip-flop as well as going northbound. And I did seriously consider the alternatives. One of my good friends was convinced that the best weather you can get is if you go northbound to Harper's Ferry and then flip up to Katahdin and then come down to Harper's Ferry.
I think you're right. I think that's correct as well.
And so that was tempting, and I looked at that carefully. I thought about doing southbound hike. I have the flexibility that I probably could have gone any direction that I wanted to. But I kept coming back to doing a northbound hike. I was drawn to the tradition. As I've mentioned to you, I've been a little crazy about planning and dreaming. And for the last 3 or 4 years, I've read a lot of memoirs. I have, I don't know how many people pick up AT guide and literally read the mileage and follow the route. But I've been doing that, and I've gotten this sense that almost culturally, going from Springer through Hot Springs and by Kincora and into Damascus, and feeling the trail in that way is something I want to experience. I know that the Smokies come after Fontana Dam.
Yes, yeah.
And it seems to be, the traditional route to go. It's the way Schaefer went. And so I keep coming back to, I'd like to do it in that way because it has been a tradition. As you get to know me, I'm a little bit of a traditionalist, a little bit of a purist in some respects. And
I could tell that by your attitude to the aqua blazing the other day.
Yeah. As you know, I'm a golfer, and my buddies have said that I was probably the last person to give up the persimmon driver when we were trying new technology 20 years ago.
Oh, that's funny.
So, yeah, gave a lot of thought. There's no doubt that the ATC would love to move traffic around. We anticipate that there'd be 4,000 people, heading northbound next year. And
is that the estimate?
Good number.
What was it this year? Do you know? Are they looking at a percentage increase?
Yeah, I think it was very close to that. I think it was just under 4,000 this year. And in speaking with Ron Tipton, the increases continue. There's still a percentage increase each year. So I think the number's going to go over 4,000 for 2018. As you're probably aware, out of the entire class, almost 90% will go northbound. It is coming down a little bit as people do a flip-flop and more people consider the southbound hike. So I think in recent years, it was always 90% or more. I think the last couple of years, it's dropped a little under 90%. It's still, though, I think north of 85% of the people who are attempting a through hike will go northbound.
I certainly buy into what you say about almost the rhythm of the hike. Fontana is followed by the Smokies, and then there's all those various different places you go to. And when you read the books, that's what you experience, because most of the books I've read, in fact, I think nearly all of the books I've read have been northbounders. So I expect certain things to come after certain other things. So, yeah, I totally buy into that as a concept. And on the trail itself, are you going to be doing the approach trail? I mean, how are you going to get to the top of Springer? Because they've got that pesky 8 miles uphill.
Sure. I'm pretty excited about that, actually. I'll be leaving home for probably somewhere around 5 months, give or take, and my wife is going to come with me to Atlanta, and we're going to head up to Amicalola, and we're actually going to do the approach trail together.
Oh, really?
And Hiker Hostel will pick us up after that first mile northbound. So Cheryl and I will walk the first mile of journey together. They'll pick us up at that parking lot so we can day hike the approach trail. We'll spend another evening at Hiker Hostel. Then the following morning, they'll take me right back to that same spot on the trail. I'll say goodbye to Cheryl, and I'll start returning to Katahdin.
I was one of these people who had to not touch every blaze, but certainly pass every blaze. And if I was picked up from a roadway, I would always, when I got dropped off the next day, walk back those few steps across the road to touch the exit of where I'd come out, just in case I missed, 20 yards here or 15 yards there, just to make sure I was covering every single inch of it. So you didn't consider the going to the forest road, then going south, touching the sign, and then going north again, or is it because Cheryl's coming?
Yeah, I considered that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've heard the approach trail is a rigorous hike, but very doable. And Cheryl's in very good physical shape, and she doesn't really want to carry 20, 30 pounds on her back. But I thought it'd be a great way to spend a brief weekend together, have her experience a little bit of the hiking experience, and then head off on my way. So I think if I was not going with Cheryl for the weekend, I wonder what I would do. I think I would still take the approach trail, but maybe unlike my purist view of aqua blazing, I don't think anybody has to do the approach trail to do a through hike.
Oh yeah, the AT definitely starts at the top of Springer, and you've had a walk when you get there as well. I'll tell you, it just seemed endless. It seemed endless to me, I must say. But it's funny actually. I kept expecting it to keep climbing, and it goes up and then goes down, then goes up, then goes down. And I thought to myself, we're going to start climbing soon. And soon I was at the top. So obviously it went up more than it went down. But it did take a heck of a long time. So she wants to experience the trail, but she doesn't want to experience using the shelters and the privies and things like that.
I think that's a fair way to put it. She definitely can do a lot of hiking, but day hiking would be best for her.
Yeah. Is she going to visit you on the trail?
Yeah, we haven't figured out exactly where, but I'm sure there'll be a number of locations, and I hope my daughters will get out a time or two as well.
Yeah, I think one of your daughters lives in New York, and there's actually I think it's a Metro North railway line that goes to the trail, and that they could literally go by subway to meet you at the station, which is really cool, I think. So
yeah, I think we're going to wait a little bit just to see how the weather is and how my progress is and how everyone's schedules match up. So my guess is certainly be I'll be out there 30 days, God willing, before really thinking about catching up with anybody like that.
Now, I suppose the thought that you are a purist, and I do understand that. I presume you're going to carry a relatively heavy pack. I don't know how much. I can't remember how much we said it was, but it's quite substantial. Are you considering at any stage slack packing? Obviously you know what slack packing is. Are you considering it, which often means going in a different direction, going from north to south?
I've considered slack packing, and I think I'll probably take the opportunity from time to time. I don't view that as some disqualifying event in doing a through hike, so I can imagine that on a given day or two, or a variety of days, there could be a great desire to take a break, really enjoy a particular hike, make it through some tough weather, whatever it might be. So, I'll consider as the opportunities present themselves.
The way I look at it is that when you're hiking, you carry on your back everything you need for the day. And if it turns out you're going back somewhere else that you're going to be staying that night where you don't need, for example, your tent with you, well, why would you take that? And if I can give you one tip of one place to slack pack, and it's not an advertisement at all for this place, but Home Place in Catawba, there is an amazing restaurant, which is just a real all-you-can-eat. And trust me, after 700 miles, all-you-can-eat is what you're going to want to eat. And this guy called Joe, I'll have to get his name now. Four Pines Hostel is a great place to stay. You'll really enjoy the people there, and they take you to Home Place. And it's only open on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And on my hike, I went there 3 times because I got interrupted by my dog bite and had to go home. But yeah, slack packing for me out of Joe's was just an awesome experience. I mean, you go up Katahdin, you don't need your full pack because you're going up and then you're coming down again, don't you?
That's right. Yeah. And no, I'm not against slack packing, and like I said, I've been reading about the opportunities and a number of people doing it. And again, if I was a betting man, I would bet that there will be a few times that I take advantage of that opportunity.
Quite. Now, I know that, and you mentioned that 4,000 people leaving, and I know that you're going in February. And what's the actual date in February?
February 25th. Well,
February
25th is actually the day that I'll say goodbye to Cheryl. We'll hike the approach trail on the 24th.
Yeah, and I know that's going to allow you to beat or be ahead of the bubble in those early months. Though you're going to get some really, really cold days. How do you cope in the varying conditions, hot and cold?
Sure. Yeah, so one reason for February was to get ahead of the bubble. I certainly acknowledge that. Not antisocial, but I've heard that some of these early campsites, there might be 50 to 100 tents on a given night.
Can you imagine?
I didn't want to get ahead of the bubble. I also, this may sound crazy, but if I'm going to do this, snow in the mountains is one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed. And I'm hoping to have some snow in the mountains. Now, if I was king of the world and I could plan things out perfectly, I'd have a nice 4 to 6 inches of snow for a week or two. I'd enjoy the snow, and then it would clear up. So I just am really looking forward to the amazing physical beauty of having that opportunity in the mountains. And, if we get 2 feet of snow going through the Smokies, well, that'll be its own challenge. And I probably will have to get off the trail to deal with that, but I'm not terribly time constrained, so I'm willing to deal with that. Another thing about leaving
I'm going to remind you that, by the way. I'm going to remind you that, by the way, by that statement.
I was doing a day hike the other day here on the Appalachian Trail near a place called Spy Rock, and I ran into a couple of southbounders, and one of them was just incredibly critical about my decision to leave at the end of February. And, it's okay. Everyone's got their own opinion. Yeah. And it may sound crazy, but I actually am not only looking forward to the snow, but I am looking forward to, the challenge of winter camping. I mean, I don't want to spend 4 or 5 months in winter camping, but again, this is a great challenge, it's a great adventure, and taking that on for a few weeks is something that I want to do and look forward to. I'm not saying it's not going to be hard. It's probably going to be very hard.
Yeah.
But you mentioned my pack.
I understand that entirely. And you're right. It's a challenge. The fact that you're knowingly going in there, going early. One of the reasons you're going early is because you want to take on that challenge. I think that's very laudable. And in fact, it is another type of hiking. You're bundled up all the time, and then you start stripping off the clothes as you start walking, and then camping in the snow. I did find quite difficult personally. I found that really, really, really difficult. In fact.
Yeah, it's no doubt about it. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And you never know what you're going to get. We've had mild summers here in the southeast. Winters, we've had mild winters, and sometimes, we can get a fair bit of snow. So you mentioned my pack.
Yeah.
I've got somewhere around 21 pounds of base weight. I keep looking at it. I'm going to continue to keep looking at it to see where I can save weight. Because certainly the most common advice you get is to cut your weight.
Yeah.
But I do have almost 5 pounds of additional gear, clothing, for what I'll consider probably the first month of the trip.
Yeah.
So I sort of just, I'm going to eventually post on my website my gear grams, spread of my kit. And
yes.
I've got a winter supplement, as it's called, where I've got a few extra items to deal with the winter camping, and it is almost 5 pounds. But the other thing to keep in mind, I think, for the critics of doing this is, I'm also 60 years old, and I also plan to go relatively slowly for this first 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah,
and having extra pounds or so won't be as difficult when I'm only trying to do 10 miles a day.
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
when I get to Virginia, I'll be able to shed some of that extra weight, and I also expect to be able to pick up the pace a little bit.
And you can be a little bit lighter as well. You shed weight not only in your pack, but on your belly, if you got a belly at all. And it was just literally dripping away from me in 5 weeks. The first 5 weeks, I lost 40 pounds in weight. That's a huge weight loss in such a short period of time. But I literally lost the weight of my backpack from my stomach, which was kind of weird, actually. Was there any other reasons for going in February?
Let's see. The winter hiking, beating the bubble, and beauty of nature in sort of with the snow. I think those are the primary reasons I decided to head out a little bit early.
And I seem to remember when we spoke previously, you kind of prefer to hike in cooler weather. How are you going to cope with the heat? Because sometimes it gets blisteringly hot, even up in the mountains.
Yeah, good point. I clearly do. That's a good point. That was one additional reason to go a little bit early, and that is stay in the cooler weather a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Steve, I don't really know. I think if I can keep up a pace of around averaging 15 miles an hour, and I've mapped this out roughly.
15 miles a day? Hang on, 15 miles an hour. That's almost Jesser pace.
Yeah, good point. But yeah, I've kind of mapped it out, and I think I can get to Connecticut, Massachusetts before it gets too hot. And you know better than I do, but I'm an old New England boy, and I think being in the mountains of New England in June, July will not be brutal, but I'm sure I'll run into some pretty tough days, and all I can do is dress down,
That's right. That's
hydrate
right.
up
That's
and
right.
deal with it.
Yeah, hydrating up is really the thing. Now, you've been a successful lawyer in your professional life. What do your colleagues make of this? And I do call it a midlife crisis. How are they approaching this with you?
Yeah, they have been great.
Good.
A number of them will say, I don't make this sound wrong, but a lot of them will say, Bruce, you're my hero. You're doing some things that I want to do, or a lot of us say we're going to do, but we never get out and do it. And
Damn right.
It's very encouraging how a number of them will say they're jealous. They're certainly excited for me, because I think there's this recognition that a lot of us have dreams in life. A lot of us have things we always wanted to do, and for whatever reason, we don't do them. And the fact that I'm sort of sliding out of the law firm, well before my career could be over, to do this is notable. And people say, gee, that's unusual. You're giving up a lot of opportunities to do something like this. So I don't think I've heard from a client or a partner that hasn't been complimentary in terms of embracing this lifelong dream and going after it.
I'm surprised, but I'm really great. I'm really pleased though, because I know that several people thought I was completely crazy, but the fact that you've got so many people supporting you in that way, particularly lawyers, there is an image, isn't there, for some lawyers, not all, obviously.
No doubt.
But, yeah, exactly. So I kind of think to myself, what their reaction would be, because if you start getting people dissing what you're doing, it kind of puts you off yourself. The fact that all your friends and colleagues have been supportive, I think that's great. And have they become involved at all in your fundraising efforts for the ATC?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because later this morning I actually have a conference call with a group at my law firm, and they're putting together a AT team group for me, because they want to figure out what can the firm do in following me. What can they do in terms of having some kind of a send-off? And one of the things I'm really excited about, probably most excited about, is to kind of use the hike to spur our wellness efforts. We always have some wellness efforts throughout the firm.
Right.
And we're trying to use the idea of 5,000 steps to create this challenge at the firm. We haven't figured out exactly how to do it, but you put a certain number of people on a team and you have this walking challenge. And so, not that everybody's going to walk 5 million steps, but
yeah. Well, hang on.
Maybe
is the challenge they've got? You said the 5,000 step challenge, or are you saying?
Did I say 5? It's
sorry, because a whole lot more than that.
Yeah, no, it's of course around the idea that there's 5 million steps to get you from Springer to Katahdin.
Absolutely.
And by using that number, if we put people in like teams of 10, so that everyone has to get a certain number of steps to get to 5 million, and the first team to get to 5 million gets some kind of prize. It's a way to boost the firm's wellness efforts.
Yeah.
As they follow me along the way and understand what the hike involves. One idea is I think they're going to have an easel in the lobby, a map of the trail, and they'll sort of have, where in the world is Bruce, and they'll be tracking my progress as things go along.
That is great. They poured into it. I love all that. And I know you are continuing to practice as a lawyer. Is your mindset now really shifted away from that? And the reason, I know the answer to that is actually quite no, because we were a little bit late on the call this morning, because you're absorbed in a legal document. So you're still practicing, obviously, as a lawyer. And as you run down your workload, can you sort of feel the pressure lifting and you're getting into your AT mindset?
Yes, I'd say, recently it's really become palpable. I still have some things I need to do to transition cases and clients and matters. And sometimes that gets intensive, just because if you can finish something and pass something along, then you've released yourself from that. So while I do have things like this morning, I missed your call because I was trying to finish up this agreement, I definitely feel the load lifting, freedom becoming more and more apparent, and the excitement building every day. And in fact, tomorrow I'm leaving for a 3-night shakedown trip just to test gear, test myself, and just further my excitement about getting ready for February.
Fantastic. Oh dear. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, and I'm really glad we're doing these, and I know next week, and I know people know the name of the show is Returning to Katahdin, and we're going to talk to you about whether there's a theme to Returning to Katahdin and what that theme means for you and what it means for your hike. So until then, thanks very much indeed, Bruce, and I will catch up with you next week.
All right, very good. Cheers.
Thank you, buddy.
Take care.
Cheers, bye. I really like the idea of one place following another from your research and the books you read. There's a definite rhythm to the hike, and I'm sure that SOBOers find that rhythm their own way. But I certainly get Bruce's reasons. In fact, were I ever to do this hike again, I'd still go northbound. I just could not imagine my hike ending at the end of that scrubby little path leading up to the top of Springer. But I would never, ever, ever go in February. I get how pretty the snow can be, but really there's only so much prettiness I can take, especially when it's freezing. Several feet of snow for weeks on end just would not work for me. Still, Bruce has thought it through, and I always appreciate his logic. Next week, we're going to be talking about the title of the podcast and whether or not there is a theme to Returning to Katahdin. Spoiler alert, there is. Please join the two of us next Monday morning bright and early, or if you can't make it then, any time at all. I'm adding the show to a different number of platforms, including Stitcher and iHeartRadio, but these things don't appear to happen overnight. Please be patient with me. I know that a lot of you have clicked on the links that I post on the various Facebook pages, so if all else fails, the podcast will be there. Don't forget that you can reach out to me with your questions for Bruce at steve@mightyblueontheat.com, or even just comments about the show. You can go directly to Bruce at rtkchallenge@gmail.com. Well, make sure that you also head over to trailtopia.com and see what they're all about. If you want to scratch your hiking podcast itch just a little bit more, don't forget to download my other podcast, Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, also sponsored by our friends at Trailtopia. Bruce and I will see you next week.